Black conservatives are everywhere.
That's why I'm here to show my support as a black man for Trump.
Pollsters can't get enough of them.
The historic levels of support the Republicans are getting from black folk under Trump.
Donald Trump is cozying up to them.
Come here, let me give you a hug.
And the RNC was full of them.
President Trump, we have the greatest economy in our lifetime.
America is not a racist country.
Can you imagine President Donald Trump coming to a city and calling a pastor like me?
You've probably heard a lot of people talking about black Republicans, but I spent all of the RNC talking to black Republicans.
So it is with being a black conservative. I equate it to being gay back in the 50s or 60s. You didn't come out the closet then.
And so you look at the people who really saying that about Trump. It's not no uppity Negroes, it's Negroes out the real hood.
And that's one reason why I'm pro-Trump and I'm a conservative, is because I truly believe in the individualistic approach to the problems that we see within the black community or in America as a whole.
Black Republicans specifically are some of the most disliked and unpopular political figures within the black community for a reason.
I'm pissed.
Of the 4 black Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives, zero represent majority black districts.
I am royally pissed.
In fact, they all represent majority white districts, something they seem to be very proud of.
South Carolina is majority white, correct?
Yeah, it's Scotia.
My district is majority white district. Your Utah is majority white district, correct? Michigan, really. Florida, is your district majority white district? Well, how do we get here?
Like, a lot of white people had to vote for it.
There is an obvious disconnect, and that's what I want to explore today. I wanted to know what draws a black person to identify with this Republican Party.
Trump has been for black people, regardless of what the media say, for a long time.
The Bible say we perish through a lack of knowledge, right? So until you teach the people, that's the only way they're gonna learn. So it's our job, me especially as a black conservative, to get out there, get on the ground, and teach these people all about the black conservative movement. And when you look at the movement now, especially right now, we speaking, baby.
I learned a lot about black Republicans in these conversations. Their motivations, their stories, their goals. These are real people with genuinely held beliefs. Beliefs that I largely disagree with, and I told them as much.
It wasn't policy. It was white people.
It wasn't white people. It was
no. Let's be very clear. It was white people. No.
I tried to have respectful dialogue with them. So in this video, I want to share these people with you, but I'll also share some of my reflections on the experience of listening to, fact-checking, and disagreeing with black Republicans. I learned a lot about black Republicans, and I think you will too. So with that, let's dig in. In talking to black Republicans, I found that their most consistent ideological North Star was an emphasis on personal responsibility. For those I spoke to, there was a real value for rigid individualism as opposed to collective progress and identity. Take Topher, for example. He's a Christian rapper, has millions of followers online, and believes, according to him, in an individualistic approach to progress for black people.
And that's one reason why I'm pro-Trump and I'm a conservative, is because I truly believe in the individualistic approach to the problems that we see within the black community or in America as a whole. And you can think about it, Black Wall Street, Harlem Renaissance, all that time, we was doing great. But when the policies came in and started destroying the black community slowly and slowly. Matter of fact, it was supposed to get rid of poverty or at least lessen it, but we have more poverty now than we had back then.
I think you'll notice a theme of dissonance present in these interviews. On the one hand, for example, Topher endorses an individualistic approach to solving the problems we face as a community. But on the other hand, he points to Black Wall Street or the Harlem Renaissance, communities that I would consider on the Mount Rushmore of black collective power. And he points to them as times we should look back on with admiration. And the question is, which one is it? Is it rigid individualism where we get it out of the mud on our own? Or is it about creating communities where we work together to build our collective resources? What's also interesting is that somehow for him, these communities no longer exist because of liberal or progressive policy decisions.
But when the policies came in and started destroying the black community slowly and slowly. Matter of fact, it was supposed to get rid of poverty or at least lessen it, but we have more poverty now than we had back then.
I think it's worth pointing out that this more poverty now than back then line is verifiably false. It falls in line with a theme that people like Byron Donalds have advanced continuously throughout this election cycle. The idea that we were better off in any way during the Jim Crow era.
During Jim Crow, the black family was together.
Yeah, that's right.
During Jim Crow, more black people were not just conservative, because black people always have been conservative-minded, but more black people voted conservatively.
It's worth noting that the black poverty rate has been falling ever since black people started receiving civil rights protections. It's almost as if these progressive policies worked.
Now, you mentioned Black Wall Street, brother, and I want to be very real with you.
Yeah.
Black Wall Street was Tulsa, Oklahoma, the Greenwood District, where black people built their own community, had their own self-sustained community, beautiful economy, making it for themselves, and white people destroyed it.
Yeah.
It wasn't policy. It was white people.
Well, it wasn't white people. It was.
No. Let's be very clear. It was white people.
No.
It
was those white people.
It was white people in that community. Absolutely.
Exactly.
And and let me just say this: Elaine, Arkansas. Rosewood in Florida, Atlanta, Georgia, the Sweet Auburn District, North Nashville and Nashville, Tennessee. Each one of these communities were booming black economies where white people, not in the same place, but it was the same group of people every time, destroyed those communities. So you can't say it's policy when when black people do what they need to do and build for themselves and white people destroy it. Yeah. So why is it that you would frame it as a policy thing?
I didn't frame it as a policy thing.
We can rewind it.
You said it was white people.
You mentioned.
I said it wasn't white people. It was those white people. And the reason why I'm saying that is because now we're trying to categorize all white people as evil.
No.
And what I'm trying to say is back then, because a lot of people don't know this, I'm gonna put this on record. Black Wall Street rebuilt themselves after that. 4 years after that, Black Wall Street rebuilt everything they had, and they prospered for the next 40 years until policy came in and destroyed it because they decided to build a freeway over their town, and that destroyed. So what I'm saying is, if we look at policy and the cultural essence of most things, right? It's not just policy, it's culture.
I was trying to draw a distinction between the nature of progressive policy, like the Civil Rights Act, or Supreme Court decisions to overturn segregation, and white supremacist policy, like destroying black communities, but the subject kept changing. Lucky for you, I actually made a video about Tulsa, Oklahoma's Greenwood District. It was definitely white racism that destroyed Black Wall Street and other black communities through explicitly racist acts of state-sanctioned violence. This is why an accurate, full telling of history is so important. Black oppression and black progress have always had a collective quality to them. Black people have been, throughout American history, targeted as a group, from slavery to black codes to Jim Crow to mass incarceration to anti-inclusion efforts today. But we've also made progress by harnessing the power of collective action during Reconstruction and the Civil Rights Movement, and even today during the black-owned business boom.
From LBJ, that's why you say we have these Negroes voting Democrat for the next 200 years. But all those policies have not done what they promised. Would you agree?
I would not agree.
So you think we're better off as black people now than we were before LBJ passed those policies?
Yes, brother. We can vote without the threat of violence. Are you talking about the Civil Rights Act of 1964? Is that what you're describing as a negative thing?
I'm not saying the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was, I'm talking about...
That's LBJ, I just want to be clear. That's LBJ, who you said, were we better off before LBJ? LBJ signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
I'm talking about the war on poverty.
I just want to answer that one. I want to answer that specific one first. Was the Civil Rights Act of 1964 a bad thing?
I agree with the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
Thank you.
But at the same time, I'm also, put it like this, I prefer dangerous freedom over peaceful slavery.
I don't know what that means. Explain more.
What it means is, I would rather, given the fact that even back then, we still had our families together, communities were stronger back then, I'd rather deal with the dangerous freedom of not knowing and controlling people with policies as much as possible versus the peaceful slavery of being married and tied to the government.
Given Trump's well-documented history of saying and doing racist things, I wanted to know how these black people could be drawn into Trump's political orbit. So I talked to Pastor Lorenzo Sewell.
Yeah, so anyone that wants to come to church, they're able to come. So when President Trump called, I thought about it like you calling me and say, hey, Pastor, I want to invite a friend to church who has 34 felonies. Hey, Pastor, I want to invite a friend to church who is a womanizer. Hey, Pastor, I want to invite a friend to church who could be a racist.
He's the lead pastor at a black church in Detroit that Trump visited earlier this year. And he was also a featured speaker at the RNC.
So all my friends back in Detroit who are Democrats, I want to ask you just one simple question. You can't deny the power of God on this man's life. You can't deny that God protected him. Could it be that Jesus Christ preserved him for such a time as this? Could it be?
Why should Black people support the Republican ticket and Donald Trump specifically?
That's a good question. You know, what I would say to any Black person is this, specifically about the Republican platform. I would say, look, do your research, right? I would say look back to 170 years ago in this state, where a group of patriots stood up and they started that grand old party to stop the expansion of slavery. If a Black person said, well, Pastor, Donald Trump is racist, the Republican Party is racist, well, let's play that theme out throughout history. Let's look at who was the party of slavery, who was the party of Jim Crow, right? Who was the party of the slave codes? Well, those are Democrats. Let's have that conversation. And when you look at when the Senate was integrated, those were Black Republicans. When we look at Frederick Douglass, Black Republican. So that's on the political side, why I believe that a Black American should be willing to look at the Republican platform. In terms of my political convictions as a pastor, my conviction in my heart. A Black woman's womb is the most dangerous place for a Black child to be. So, if a Black American, specifically a Black woman, my conversation would be, give our Black babies a chance. Look at the Republican Party in terms of President Donald J. Trump. This is what I would say. Don't look at the container, look at the content, right? Don't look at the man, look at the mission, right? Don't look at his past. Look at what your agenda is for your community in the future.
Conservatives are leading the charge to remove protections for voting rights, protections for maternal mortality, interventions in California, affirmative action, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Sure. These are all issues that pertain directly to the people that I know that you serve in your community. Why should they support the party behind the hindrance, the advancement of the very things that I know you stand for?
Sure. Black people that I know, that I represent, that I've had these conversations with, they don't want to be put in a position because they're Black. There's not one Black person I know that will say to me, Lorenzo, I deserve this position because I'm Black.
But I want to. But you know that that's not what DEI is. DEI is about fair hiring practices, opening up opportunity, like creating pathways, like. But
you're smart. You're an intelligent man, and those that would say this, I believe they're very intelligent. It costs more money not to hire the person who's the best than to be racist. It actually costs more money. So if you're the best at what you do, right? And let's just say I'm a racist. So let's just say that, let's play that out, right? And let's just say, hey, there are 20 white guys that are not as competent as you, but I'm not gonna pick you because you're Black. It's gonna cost me more money.
They don't even know that this qualified person exists, right?
Sure, I hear you.
The pathways are the problem. And a lot of what diversity, equity, and inclusion is doing is creating those and helping to clarify those pathways. And so framing it as an unqualified person getting the job, when we know, you and I both know, that there are plenty of qualified Black people or Latino people or women who don't end up with jobs.
100%. And I agree with you. I do think relationships and proximity matter.
In his book, The Grift, Clay Cane details the history of how Black conservatives have thrown Black people under the bus to get ahead personally. From Black Republicans like Isaiah Montgomery and Booker T. Washington to modern Black Republicans like Clarence Thomas, Clay Cane makes the case that the modern Black Republican is likely, if not assuredly, a grifter, a person who is doing that which is politically expedient rather than doing what is right, doing whatever they need to do to get that all expenses paid trip to fancy places. I couldn't help but wonder if some of the folks I was talking to fit that description. So I asked Pastor Lorenzo whether or not he was a grifter.
In my reporting, I've spoken to Clay Cane, who wrote a book about grifters, how sometimes Black Republicans will align themselves with political power for their own personal advantage.
Sure.
What do you say to a person who says, hey, like, you're a talented, gifted person, but we didn't necessarily know who you were, but now you're speaking on one of the biggest platforms in the world tonight?
Quite frankly, I don't need another opportunity to speak. Has the Republican Party said, Lorenzo, we're gonna write you a big check? No. If they did, it's just gonna go right to the community anyway, right at the end of the day, because that's where my salary goes.
You've mentioned Frederick Douglass and others from the 1800s, early 1900s. In those times, Black Republicans were elected by Black people.
Sure.
Today, Black Republicans, they're elected in majority white districts.
Agreed.
Why is it difficult, maybe even some would say impossible for a Black Republican to be elected in a Black?
That's a good question. You know what? I'll wrestle with that. I think the biggest problem is the Republican Party, in my opinion, they have I believe, drifted from their roots in terms of Black people having authority within that party. I don't believe the Republican Party has learned well how to support financially those who are Black Republicans that want to come out the closet. I equate it to being gay back in the 50s or 60s, right? Or even 70s. You didn't come out the closet then, like the movie Philadelphia, right? Because you could be ostracized. So it is with being a Black conservative. We have been, the Lord has blessed our church. He's been very kind to us to really serve our community. However, me just having President Trump at our church, if I could play the voicemail, sir, these are the ones I haven't had time to delete. If I could send you the emails where it's like, really? I mean, people that I thought loved me, they're like calling me everything but a child of God. I'm like, hold on for a second. Can we have a conversation? Why are you like, not?
How has that made you feel?
You know, I was a drug dealer. I was a street pharmacist, right? Former. So people that you love are hurts. I have to be frank with you, you know. But other people that don't know you, don't understand your motives, I get it. When tensions are high, motives are questions. And tensions have been high in our country as it pertains to politics. So people question my motives. I understand that. But for the people that love you, it hurts. It really does. And that's the reason why Black people won't come out the closet.
A relatively small percentage of Black people will vote for Trump this November. But I have a take and I want to share it with you. A more inclusive and racially diverse Republican Party could be a good thing. American conservatives and Republicans have made the lives of Black people difficult on purpose. From the Southern strategy to welfare queens to anti-woke, anti-DEI stuff today, American conservatives have galvanized their white base by making the lives of Black people harder. It could be a good thing to see more Black Republicans if it means that the Republican Party is becoming actively hostile to the racists who have called that party their home for the last 60 years at least. Make American politics inhospitable to racists. I'm all in on that platform. But the reality is that racists, or at least racism enablers, were present and accounted for at the RNC. They were given stage time, had exclusive access, and seemed central to the whole operation. And I'll tell you what did not feel central. Black people. I actually attended the Black delegate event during the RNC, and something really interesting happened. The event was taking place away from the main convention center. And in the middle of it, unexpectedly, former President Donald Trump's motorcade could be heard approaching the event from a distance. People have been having a great time before that moment, but you should have seen the excitement on people's faces when they realized it was Trump approaching their event. It really felt like this big moment of acknowledgement, the perfect punctuation in a banner year for Black Republicans. Journalists and news crews were scrambling to get into position to make sure they captured that moment when he comes to this event. But then his motorcade just drove by. It turned out he wasn't coming to the event. It wasn't on his schedule. It just happened to be along his route.
He waved at us. In case you didn't see it, he waved.
The disappointment for this group of Black Republicans was tangible and kind of poetic. And I think that's my big concern with the future of the Republican Party. The RNC had quite a few drive-by acknowledgments that Black people exist, but little to no substantive action plans for how they would show up and be present with and for this community. And if I'm honest with you, I think that's on purpose. The only way the Republican Party becomes this ideologically conservative but racially inclusive big tent party is if there is a fundamental rejection of the people and policy and practice they currently hold as sacred, near and dear to their political vision. As long as the GOP makes racial justice a political issue worth fighting against, a majority of Black people will never vote for the party. As long as teaching Black history is woke, as long as race-conscious solutions to race-conscious problems are demonized, as long as they commit to denying racism's impact on society, Black people, by and large, are not going to vote for them. But these guys may. And that might be good enough for them.